In the late 12th century, the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem was a precarious Christian stronghold surrounded by powerful Muslim states. It was a land of constant tension, a fragile peace always teetering on the brink of war. And at the heart of this conflict were two of the most remarkable figures of the Middle Ages: Saladin, the great Sultan of Egypt and Syria, and Baldwin IV, the young, courageous, but tragically afflicted King of Jerusalem. Let's set the stage. By 1177, Saladin had spent years consolidating his power. Born in Tikrit, in modern-day Iraq, he rose through the ranks to unite Egypt and Syria under his Ayyubid dynasty. His ambition was clear: to drive the Christian Franks, as they were called, out of the Holy Land and reclaim Jerusalem for Islam. He was a brilliant strategist, a charismatic leader, and a devout Muslim, respected even by his enemies for his chivalry and honor. In the autumn of 1177, Saladin saw his chance. He had gathered a massive army, perhaps as many as 26,000 soldiers, a formidable force of elite Mamluk cavalry, light horsemen, and infantry. His target was Ascalon, a key fortress on the coast of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The kingdom was vulnerable. Its primary military leader, Philip of Flanders, had taken a large portion of the army north to campaign against Muslim territories. This left the southern frontier dangerously exposed. Ruling this vulnerable kingdom was a truly extraordinary young man, Baldwin IV. Baldwin had been crowned king at just 13 years old. But even before his coronation, a terrible fate had been sealed. As a child, his tutor, William of Tyre, noticed that the young prince didn't feel pain in his right arm. It was the first sign of what would later be diagnosed as the most aggressive form of leprosy. By 1177, at the age of 16, the disease had taken a severe toll. He was weakened, his face was beginning to show disfigurement, and he often had to be carried on a litter. Many might have despaired, but not Baldwin. Despite his physical suffering, he possessed an iron will, a sharp strategic mind, and the unwavering courage of a born warrior. He was determined to lead his people and defend his kingdom, no matter the cost. His subjects revered him, calling him the Leper King, not as an insult, but as a title of awe and respect for his incredible fortitude. When news of Saladin's massive invasion reached Jerusalem, panic set in. The main army was far to the north. All that stood between Saladin and the heart of the kingdom was a tiny, hastily assembled force. How tiny? We're talking about maybe 375 knights, a few thousand infantry, and the king himself, Baldwin IV. Among these knights was another legendary figure, Reynold of Chatillon, a fierce and often reckless warrior who had recently been released from years of captivity. Also present was the Knights Templar, a powerful military order, led by their Grand Master, Odo of St. Amand. They were some of the most disciplined and fearsome fighters in the Christian world. But even with the Templars, their numbers were laughably small compared to Saladin's vast host. Saladin, confident in his overwhelming numerical superiority, made a critical mistake. He assumed the Christian force was too small and too terrified to challenge him directly. He believed Baldwin was holed up in Ashkelon, trapped. So, Saladin didn't bother to maintain tight military discipline. He allowed his army to spread out across the countryside, to plunder villages and farms, believing the campaign was as good as won. He was marching leisurely towards Jerusalem, the ultimate prize. He had completely underestimated his opponent. Inside Ascalon, Baldwin IV knew that waiting to be besieged was a death sentence. He made a daring, almost insane decision. He wouldn't wait for Saladin to come to him. He would take the fight to Saladin. On November 25, 1177, Baldwin and his tiny army slipped out of Ascalon. Using their local knowledge, they marched quickly along the coast before turning inland, aiming to intercept Saladin's disorganized army. They were a ghost, moving unseen, a tiny David preparing to face a giant Goliath. They found Saladin's army near a hill called Montgisard, not far from the city of Ramla. The Ayyubid forces were completely unprepared. They were scattered, their baggage train was vulnerable, and many of the soldiers were busy looting. Saladin himself was taken by surprise. He scrambled to get his men into formation, but it was too late. Baldwin IV, despite his illness, demanded to be at the forefront of his army. According to the chroniclers, he was helped from his horse. He knelt before a relic of the true cross, which was carried into battle with the army, and prayed for victory. Seeing their afflicted king on his knees, praying with such fervor, filled his knights with a powerful surge of courage and religious zeal. They were not just fighting for their kingdom, they were fighting for their king and their God. Then, the order was given. Charge! The small contingent of Crusader knights, with the Templars leading the vanguard, formed a tight wedge and crashed into the center of Saladin's unprepared army like a thunderbolt. The impact was devastating. The Mamluks, Saladin's personal bodyguard, and the elite of his army were hit first. The sheer ferocity of the Crusader charge broke their lines. It was a chaotic, brutal melee. The Christian knights, encased in heavy armor, were like unstoppable tanks against the more lightly armored Ayyubid cavalry. Saladin's army, which had been so confident just moments before, dissolved into panic. Soldiers who had been looting were cut down before they could even reach their weapons. The lines wavered, broke, and then the entire army turned and fled. Saladin himself was almost captured. He had to escape on a racing camel, his personal Mamluk guard fighting and dying to protect his retreat. The rout was total. The once mighty Ayyubid army was scattered to the winds. The Christians pursued them relentlessly, cutting down stragglers for miles. Saladin's baggage train, full of treasure and supplies, was captured. It was a catastrophic defeat for the great Sultan. The aftermath was brutal for Saladin's army. Their retreat back to Egypt, a journey of over 250 miles, was a nightmare. They were harried by Bedouin raiders. They suffered from torrential rains and cold, and many starved to death. Of the 26,000 men who had marched so confidently into the Kingdom of Jerusalem, only a tenth, a mere fraction, made it back to Egypt with Saladin. He had lost the vast majority of his army, including his elite Mamluk guard. It was the most severe defeat of his entire military career. Back in Jerusalem, there was jubilation. The 16-year-old leper king had achieved the impossible. He had led a tiny force to a miraculous victory against one of the most powerful rulers in the world. The Battle of Montgisard became legendary, a testament to Baldwin's incredible courage and a symbol of the Crusader spirit. It secured the Kingdom of Jerusalem for another decade, pushing back the specter of Saladin's conquest. For Baldwin, it was his finest hour. He had proven that even with his debilitating disease, he was a formidable leader and a brilliant tactician. He continued to rule and lead his armies in person for several more years, his will triumphing over his failing body. For Saladin, the defeat was a harsh but valuable lesson. He would never again underestimate the Franks, and particularly, he would never again underestimate Baldwin IV. He would return, and the struggle for the Holy Land would continue. But the memory of Montgisard of the day a sick boy king defied the odds and crushed a great army would echo through history. It remains one of the most stunning upsets in military history, a story of unbelievable courage against impossible odds. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this piece of Crusader history, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.